Great. Let me just say, come with your questions. I had a bunch that I just posted on Discord. If you want to have a check at that, let me also just turn on that. So these are the questions I thought people might be interested in doing. But if you have a different question or you want more questions or whatever the case is, this time is your time. So I'm just going to go and ping people on Piazza for 1 second, and then I'll be right back to talk about this. Hmm, 1400. Exam 6. All right. So since everyone goes silent and secretive on me here, yeah, perfect. That's what I was going to ask. Can you post it in chat if you don't want to talk? I know you mentioned this multiple times now, but could you please just quickly go over which topics are going to be in the exam? Okay, so also what we talked about last week, so you can also review that if you want, if there's any particular part that you missed. So the last synchronous class hit most of them. So we got polymorphism. There's 4 different kinds of polymorphism, just to remind you. So, and all of those are fair game. We also have information hiding, which is why we have objects and we have this sort of encapsulation of information, why you do not know about why you have private and public and protected variables. We have, let me see here, we have inheritance, why we have classes to begin with, because not only does it act like an object, like a thing that we have, and it knows how to deal with itself, but when you have a similar thing to it, you can just say it's like that class, but a little bit different. It's a child of that class. That's inheritance. So those are the 3 things for object-oriented programming. We looked at MFC that is not on the exam. So no MFC. But we did look at model view controllers and events. I didn't go hardcore into events. So as a result, if I didn't go hardcore into events for the assignment, then I will not go hardcore into events on the exam. I like asking questions that are similar but not the same as what you've done in assignments or in quizzes or in the lecture. If I spent a large amount of time on something, that's what I'll spend time on. You should know how strings work, because that's how we sort of introduced objects. There is an expectation that you know C code to a certain extent, but you should be using, say, new instead of using malloc. You need to know constructors and destructors and the order that they work. You would need to know what getters and setters are. Yeah, public, private, protected is a big one. And other than the, like, what is a this pointer, perhaps? Like, there's what is a static variable. There are cases where there are topics that are not, they might be worth a multiple choice question. There might be questions that are bigger. The biggest questions would be things that I would expect you to have done the work for. So if we do a ton of stuff on linked lists are fair game, right? Not to say, hey, make a linked list, but how do you use a linked list? Or I'm using this linked list, what would I expect? Or what is the error in here? What kind of testing can we do? What is an assert? We might say things like, let me think of a good example. Oh, the not linked list, the tree data structure, right? We hit the 3 different assignments. If you didn't learn in those 3 assignments, you should have asked for help. They're fair game. I would expect people to know what a tree is, right? Anything that you would have done in this term, especially things that you would have done in this term, but random person on Chegg wouldn't know about, just finding out all about those sort of crazy things that you guys have nowadays. If it was something that, if we did it in the lab, it's technically fair game. I wouldn't say, hey, do the zombie game here, but it is technically fair game. what you'd expect is anything that I beat to death is more likely to show up on the exam. Anything that, especially things that you can't just easily just steal from online. I'm not going to ask for memorizations or anything like that. I'm not going to ask you to implement actually, I couldn't ask to implement a queue. We didn't actually do that yet. I wouldn't ask you to do something that I wouldn't ask you just say make a queue without any kind of structure or any kind of thing to define it, because it's too easy to steal from online, or linked list, too easy to steal online. I'm looking for things that are, if you sat in the class and you did the work, you pass the exam, and if you don't do those things, you fail. That's where, like, if you do the work, you pass. If you don't do the work, you fail. That's the ideal that we're aiming for, and you should be able to do it in 90 minutes. That's not always the guarantee. So things I might sometimes, it's very hard to make a perfect exam, obviously. And so if the exam is way too hard or way too easy, it's really hard to gauge that. That's why I have the TAs take the exam. But if the TAs, we always can be off with these sorts of things. And so I'm just saying what I'm aiming for. That doesn't necessarily mean that if you do poorly on the exam, but you should have done well, that doesn't mean that you should, I don't think you did well, or that I didn't think you did the work. It means it's aiming to fail people that don't do the work and pass people that do the work, but I can be off. Okay, so up to and including model view controllers, but not including standard template libraries, templating, and sorting, I do believe. It's also on the front page of the exam. If you look on CLearn, I have the list of the exam. Not the question amounts. You should also be, make sure you have, Visual Studio ready to go. You don't have to use it, but it's an option. And you can also just type it in directly. But and I don't want, so let me very, very clearly point this out as well. Just because your code doesn't compile perfectly does not mean it's not perfectly valid to submit. It's an exam. It's under exam pressures. And you trying to figure out where the one little weird bug in your code is and wasting 20 minutes is a bad idea. It's a minute per point, essentially. It's a 70-minute exam. It's a 90-minute exam, 70 points. So if you spend a minute per point, and this thing, it's supposed to be a 5-point question, let's say. None of them are 5 points. Let's say it's a 5-point question. It should be 5 minutes to do the question. If it takes you 15 minutes, you're in trouble. Punt, move on to the next question. And if you're I don't want you spending 10 minutes trying to debug it for a 5-point question. It's just, these are things you have to learn as an undergraduate student. Everyone does. Everyone has a bad exam, but that's the question, the thing that there's a balancing act that everyone learns to make while you're doing your undergraduate degree, or high school. I think you might have learned it as well. Other questions? And is there anything of these topics I'm showing you here that you really want to hit? So hash tables and standard template library functions are useful for A6. Same with queues and sorting. They are not for the exam. So it depends on how, what's the word I'm looking for? Pragmatic you want to be, how hand to mouth you want to be. Like, just for the exam, do you want to just talk about exam stuff, or do you want to move on to stuff for the next assignment? Exam. All right. Sample exam or other exam questions that are potentially on there. Or better yet, just say what questions or topic you want me to go over. I'm more than happy to do it.
Hello?
Yep.
I think it's easier for me to just speak than to type. I noticed in your assignments that we've had and in your examples, whenever we implemented a virtual function, we never include a virtual destructor. I wasn't sure if that's actually necessary or not, but I noticed that, like, sometimes when I went to refer to other things for help, some things mentioned implementing virtual destructors, and I just
The destructor is only for the object, not for the function.
Okay, because I'm not sure then I'll look into
Great.
that, because I saw a virtual destructor places too. So
Oh,
Yeah.
the word virtual in your destructor, it shouldn't make a difference either. I put it in a lot of the times as well. So your destructor, what you need to make sure your destructor does, you shouldn't actually need the word virtual for your destructor, but I sort of out of force of habit, I guess, put it in there. If you make a destructor, so when you call delete or when your object gets destroyed, whatever means, the destructor gets automatically called. And if you have a parent class, you'll automatically call the child one as well. Okay. Oh, am I using? I could be using virtual destructors wrong as well. It's called no matter whatever. Now the chain one would have meant to be virtual and when not. Make sure it starts in the top instead of in the middle.
I wasn't sure if it was like kind of a style choice or not. I came across them one day.
I was coming at it as a style choice, and I may have hit some weird bug when I go to do it. And it's been years since I was doing coding in a large game company or something like that. This is Java and C#, so you can specify the class final. Oh yeah, they allowed that. Okay. They're supposed to read not to use a virtual destructor. Now they say that use it only when you have the reason to believe that your class is derived from. What do you think? Okay, this is one of those. This will get us in the weeds, and I don't want to. I'm not going to be picking on that for the exam either. But in case you're wondering, from my perspective at least, the word virtual for the destructor shouldn't make a difference at all. It will allow you to potentially not have that destructor, but only the parent class would have the destructor. But from my perspective, I've been putting in the destructors and defining each of those destructors every time. If I put the destructor in, I defined it. And so whether you have virtual or not, it's going to go to the right place. It's going to go to that one you defined in that class. And it will automatically call the child destructor, the parent's destructor second, right? So when I call the destructor, let's say we're going to have this grocery list class that I can play with, or at least that's for the sample exam. So if I have a weighted grocery, that's a child class. I would automatically call my destructor, do my destructor stuff for the weighted grocery, and then I call the destructor on the parent's version afterwards. It's the exact opposite order of my constructor. My constructor, I build the parent, then build the child, and when I'm destroying, I destroy the child, then destroy the parent. Because if you imagine it like an onion, I want to go with an onion. Onions have layers. I watched Shrek recently. I have kids. Anyways, so if you have an onion, if you're going to build this thing up, right? Which I guess onions, you don't really build up an onion, but if I want to put another layer on, I have to have the first layer in there. The original class is here. The level up is a layer on top of it. The level above the child class of that is a layer on top of that. And so when I'm destroying things, I have to go out to in. And so if you think of it that way, the build up and tear down makes sense. You go in to out, and then when you destroy it, you go out to in to destroy this thing. And so the virtual, I think it's personally, from my standpoint, I'm thinking it as a style thing. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking it as a style thing. It's one of those.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Another question that I would have is, what is the difference when you implement an object just as a type of the class versus as a pointer to the class? That makes sense.
Got it. One's dynamic is normally, so we wouldn't say normally just as a pointer to the class. It is because I'm dynamically creating that object. So if we want to have a look at that, let's see if I can do something like this. I'm going to see if I can add a couple little things here first. So I'm going to add a class. I'm going to call it grocery just because grocery item, maybe. It's not, oh, my mouse just died on me here. Okay, here we go, grocery item. It's not going to really have anything. I'm going to have some private variables, and it's going to have float price, and then it's going to have, I sometimes go penny price just to make sure it doesn't work. I'm going to have a char pointer, and it's going to be the name. All right. So I'm going to, for this thing, instead of using a C string, I'm going to use, instead of using a string object, I'm going to use a character array. Why? Because I can. And then I'm also going to have this floating point price. Okay. I want to have some getter methods. So let's pop those up here. Some people swear one way or the other. I'm not going to get into that screaming fest that programmers get into. People are very, very firm on how they approach things. I don't want to say one way or the other, go one way or the other. I'm going to make sure I have something that requires let's call or item name. There we go. And float P for price. Tilde grocery item. And we'll get to your question, I promise, in a second. And then I want to throw those things in there. Okay, grocery item is going to be on everything. So okay, I have this character array. So I am going to make a brand new character array. And so I want to make a new character array is equal to new char. It's an array of size, however long this thing is. Item named strlen. So I can just get the length of that other array copied over. I don't want to just carry the pointer. I want to call new on this thing. And then I'm going to strcpy name into item name. And I think I want to do the safe version of it. Maybe I'll move this over. Just so I don't have to calculate the same thing multiple times. Boop. And boop. So this is old school. If anyone did this course with me, 1400 with me. And I don't want that, but my thing is getting in the way. I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to... Seriously? Hold on. This stupid Zoom thing is going to drive me nuts here. Oh, it's going to force me to do this. Save. No. I'm not trying to save as, so why is it barfing on me? It's because it's syncing. Okay. But I'm going to eventually have to put in, let's say, pragma once, include I think standard library will do that for the string character, the character strings. Not sure. Let's see this one. Come on, give me an error. What the error message is. Okay. Oh, you piece of garbage. Can I don't want to find out that I'm going to save it the wrong way. Try that. Oh, that's useful. All right. Let's figure out what my problem is here. Should be an unrecognized external. Grocery items, this. It should be in there somewhere. So I've got to figure out what the, oh, it seems to have resolved itself. All right. One failed. Okay. So why is it still? Okay, let me move on for a second because we'll see this in action when we finally compile it. What I want to do though is when I delete it, I have to delete that character array. That's the reason I wanted to do this. So every time I'm calling new, I'm making this character array. When I make a new one of these things, I got to call delete no matter what. So I'm going to call delete, that kind of delete on my character array name. I should also probably say if name does not equal null. It's just a pointer to a character array. That's what the problem is. I'm missing a curly brace or something in here. Items to do. Because the indentation is completely wrong. Okay, something weird is happening. So that's what I would, and then I want to say, there's something really wonky going on here. But I'm going to move on from that. So this is what my CPP file would normally look like. My items, I think, is probably where the issue is, but no. Anyways, I'm going to move on to this thing. I'm going to make a grocery item G. This, oh, and I need to also include that thing. Okay. So when a grocery item, okay, so I make a grocery item G. I'm also going to make a blank grocery item because that should be. Okay. Wow, that's really something's going on with this thing. Okay, name is equal to new char array, character array of size 10, let's say. And then I'm going to say name at position 0 is equal to, effectively, I'm just going to make it a blank string. And then name len is equal to, no, this says value. It should be a value in here. Price. All right. This should still not compile properly because of this whole weird thing going on here. Public. Okay. But I have to go back to what we were looking at. Class this, public, private. I probably have something just really silly in here. But here's what we're gonna talk about. That when I do this right there on this line, no matter where, like at the very beginning of my function, I will make that object right there at the beginning. It's static. I can't choose whether I make it or not. It's going to be made every single time. Okay. I cannot do things like if the file doesn't exist, don't make this object. I will make that object no matter what. It's static. It is not going to change. Every time I run my program, I'm going to make an object there. And it's going to call the constructor every single time. And when I get down here, the destructor is called. Okay. Here we go. Grocery item G2, let's say P G2 is equal to new grocery item. And let's put some values in here. Hello and 19.35. That should do it, I do believe. I can also leave off the F, the thing that makes it a double. That'll make it a double. Actually, I need the F for floating point number. Okay. Oh, it's a constant character pointer. So let's make that. Anyways, this will make it will make a grocery item object, and then the pointer will point to it. I still made the object. I just going at it with a pointer, meaning I don't get it if I don't call this one here, the first one, G, that's going to be made no matter what. Every time I run my program, every time I get to that chunk of code, it's going to make it. Versus if I put this in an if statement, let's say, I may or may not make it. If I don't know how many objects I'm going to have, if I do not know how big the array has to be, if I don't know how many objects I'm going to be creating, if I have a whole bunch of different shapes I'm drawing and I don't know what kind of shape they are, I need this way. What you may not have noticed in the sample, in the code for P5, sorry, P5B, was that every time I made a shape, first of all, I don't know how many shapes I'm going to make, but I had an array of pointers to shapes, because if I had an array of shapes, I am making those shapes no matter what. I will make every single one of those shapes blindly at the runtime, not when I need it, not when I request it. I'll make it right away. If I have an array of pointers to shapes, I say, by the way, I'm going to make a new one, and I make a new one, call new, and set the pointer. I can't, if I'm making an array of shapes, I will automatically call the new on each one of those shapes. And the bigger issue is if I want to make a rectangle shape instead of a shape 2400, I'm out of luck. It will make shape 2400s blindly without wondering what kind of shape it is. It's just going to make the same kind. It's going to make, if I have an array of shape 2400s, it's going to make all shape 2400 objects. The pointer version of it allows me to figure out what kind of object I want later. It allows me to make a child class of it and use it in there without anyone needing to be the wiser. So no matter what shape I have, I just put it into my array of shapes and my array of shape views, and it just works. That's why you always end up seeing this kind of thing in your code when you're doing C, because you oftentimes you don't know what kind of object you want to make. You're making this. If you have a child class, you're going to want to use pointers to these objects, not the actual objects, because otherwise it will just automatically generate one. The issue is, where is that destructor called? It's not called unless you explicitly do it, or until your program ends. So if I leave this program on, like I'm playing a video game, let's say I'm making a video game and this keeps on running. If I make an object and then don't free it, it's still mine. I still keep it around. It doesn't get destroyed. This one gets destroyed at the end of the function, no matter what the function is. It's living and dying within that function. The other one, I make it and it doesn't get freed until I say delete to it, until I explicitly say this thing is freed, and call the and then the destructor gets called. So for a static, the destructor gets automatically called at the end of where or whatever it was created. It's created between here and here. Destructor is called. This one, it's created here. The destructor whenever the program ends. And that's one of the other major factors that's going on here. Does that answer your question, hopefully? That was a long-winded
Yes, so
answer.
it's the difference between something being statically made versus dynamically made?
Static versus dynamic, yeah.
Okay. And then another question I would have of a similar aspect would be, could you explain how when you create a static class, or I think that's the right thing, but like when you declare static within a class, the object becomes a member of the class, basically? Because you kind of...
We've hit this before. So we have static functions and we have static member variables, a static class. I'm trying to think of the times I've made a static class.
Sorry, I think I meant static function, like something
Okay.
within a class so that it's a member of the class, basically.
Do you remember where you saw that last?
Not particularly, but I can go find it.
Oh, I maybe other people can speak up. Do you remember where you saw a static function. The word static was on a function. You saw it recently, as in probably last night. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, Zoom, how you annoy me with your little bar that blocks stuff. All right, let's see if we can find that static function. And you didn't see anything at all. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Sometimes we double check, triple check exams. That doesn't mean anything at all, just me checking things. Okay, so let's see, assignments. And A5, where is it? Model view controller, FFB model view controller. I'm hoping this is not referring to what I'm talking about right now, because we are talking 2400, right? So where are we going? Shape Factory. Let's have a look at this one. Oh, wait. What's that? Yeah. Shape Factory. Is it one of those examples? I had people in my very first term asking me about static functions. So I went out of my way to make sure I had a static function in here. So great question. Static function, meaning I don't make an instance of a factory and then say, hey, factory, build me this. I just say, make this kind of object. I don't need to have instances of it. This thing will work as a class. You can almost think of this as how C code works. You call the function, you pass stuff into the function. You don't have instances of an object and then you ask the object to do something for you. You just say, over in this thing, over in this class over here, I have a function that does this. Over in the shape factory, I have something called make model. It's going to make a shape 2400 object. Notice it can't be a shape 2400 by itself. It has to be a pointer, because otherwise it would only return shape 2400s, not a rect 2400, not a triangle 2400. By having a pointer, it allows me to do inheritance. Okay, so make model is a static function. It says, you pass me this stuff and I will generate one of these shapes. You do not need to make an instance of the factory. You just say, make one of these models. So if you want to actually see this in action, let's see if I have the canvas class. It'll be around here somewhere. Let me see canvas right here and make model. I'm going to look for. Here we go. In the shape factory class, call the function called make model. With these parameters, it will make a model. It'll pass it back to you, store it in this array called the member variable. The M is for member variable, shape list. I store all my shape, all my models, my views, and my controllers as 3 different things. And I may have actually only said something about 2400 in my 1400 group. Okay. So I have a bunch of models. I just call the factory. I notice I don't have to make an instance of the factory. I just say, hey, factory class, make this. It's not an instance. I can't make 15 different factories. I don't make 15 different factories. I just say, make one of these object types. It works very, very similar to how C works. That's what a static function is. A static variable, I could also throw in. Let's see if I can easily throw one in. And do I have? Anyways, I can have let's see if I can make a static. Oh, there's a get. That's a static function. Darn it. Here would be a static variable. Static int shape ID. Okay. Every time so let's say I do this. Every single time I make a new model, I increment the shape ID and I pass the shape, this number to the object being made. It's not, I don't make an instance of it. and not, I don't have different factories that store that number. It is, if I had, one of the classic examples would be if I have a car class, I could have a static variable that is the number of cars on the road. So every time I make a new car, I increment this static variable. It's a variable associated with the class, not the individual instance. The class has this. So the number of cars on the road is not nothing to do with that individual car. It just keeps a running tally of all the cars that have been created. It's a part of the class, not the individual element. The individual object still can get access to that variable, but it's not part of the object. It's part of the class, sort of defining of the class. I'm trying to think of a good example for like humans or things along those lines. Um, all all the cars will sort of share the same data. So when the car, the reason it's called it's called a static variable is that it does not change. As in when I start my program, I will get this static variable. I don't need to instantiate or make a single object. I will still have this variable just floating around because it's part of the class. I don't have to make a new object at all. It's just there. It gets made immediately upon starting my program. So I don't need to make an instance. It's part of the class. That's hard to explain, but hopefully that made clear as mud, but hopefully it was a bit clearer than I think it is.
Thank you.
All right. Can I unpack anything else of anything for people? Because I haven't been picking on static that much this term. Other terms I have, and therefore more likely to show up on the exam. Since I haven't been picking on it, probably not going to show up that, or if it's going to show up, it's going to show up for like a multiple choice question. It was covered in class in those lectures, but it was not beaten.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to pick topics because no one else is asking questions, but maybe could you go over quickly abstract and pure virtual functions?
Oh, so I know what virtual functions are. I know what an abstract class is. Abstract functions, there's all this terminology that you sort of use.
Sorry, did I say abstract functions? I meant abstract class.
Right. So let's have a look at one.
Pure virtual function.
Let's see if I have one waiting around here. Shape 2400. Hopefully, I got to look at the shape 2400.h though. This would end up becoming an abstract class, right? I originally didn't have it as an abstract class. Originally, when I did this program way long time ago, I had a shape class, and then I had a rectangle class, and I had a circle class. And then people said, well, what does a shape look like? You know what a rectangle looks like. You know what a circle looks like. There's no such real thing to draw as a shape, right? It's sort of an abstract class. What does a mammal look like? There's no instance of mammal. There's an instance of like a cat, of a human, of a bat, but there's no mammal. All of those are mammals, but there's no such, you cannot have a mammal class, if you will. If you said, however, cat, let's bear in mind this is culturally and dependent and the like. But when someone says cat, you think presumably house cat, not tiger, not lion, not cougar, puma, whatever the case is. You think house cat. And so if I say the cat class, if I not using one of the child classes, I'm expecting a domesticated house cat. Mammals, I can't make a mammal. There's no such thing as a mammal class by itself. That's an abstract class. I can't make a mammal. I can make a house cat. I can make a human. They're both mammals. But the parent class, the thing that is sort of the class that has all the information, like produces milk, has body hair, probably doesn't fly, except for bats. Things along those lines that mammals have in common, gives birth to live young, right? The things that mammals have in common, you would expect in the parent class. So the parent class, you would say, has milk, produces milk, has fur, gives birth to live young, doesn't fly. And when you get to the bat class, you say, nope, actually, in terms of doesn't fly, it does. And in terms of the platypus class, you say, nope, it lays eggs. But you can make exceptions in the child class. But the parent class has those rules. But I cannot make a mammal. That's what that abstract class is for. So here's what we're going to do for the abstract class. Hopefully I have shape controller, shape model. Here we go. So paint outline, get the area. There we go. There's it being. So that's what I needed. This equals 0 says, I am not going to define get area. It's not defined. And so therefore, because it's not defined, any child class has to define it, but I cannot make a shape class. That was my mistake, by the way. I was meaning to leave that equals 0 off. You got it for free. That equals 0 means I cannot make a shape 2400. I can make a triangle 2400. I can make a rectangle 2400, circle 2400. I cannot make a shape 2400 because of that thing. That equals 0, meaning I'm not going to define get area, and it needs to be defined. So therefore, I cannot make an instance of this kind of object. The virtual is a different beast. So hopefully that gives me the abstract part. Let's see what the chat says, and then I'll get to the other one. Okay. What could be, oh, there you go. Edema, any hints on the midterm? I don't. Stefan, can you explain what you mean by hints for the midterm, as in for exam 2 or for the midterm sample midterm? And I'll let me hit Fatima's question first. Model view controller kind of question that we can give. I think the refactoring itself that we did for the assignment, relatively, once you've done it once or twice, relatively easy once you've done it, that would have been perfectly fine. I might give you the code for a triangle class and say modify it in this way. I could say what's wrong with this code. That would be perfectly fine for a model view controller. I could have, move stuff around, or, that sort of thing. I cannot expect you to write the entire class during the exam. It's way too big and way too error prone. You can expect, I can give you code and then you just have to tweak or move things or modify something or define this particular function. But yeah, exactly. It would be an extremely long exam. And I've unfortunately done long exams. I'm trying not to make long exams, but people say, oh, I don't want to read stuff. I'm like, but it's better than the alternative. Exam 2 topics, which we focus on more compared to the other topics. All the stuff we've been, if you saw it on an assignment, fair game, and something to, to make sure that you understand the concept. So something like abstract classes, fair game, right? It just means you put a 0 in it, equals 0 on one of the functions, the function you want to make sure somebody else defines. Get area makes no sense for a shape. There's no such thing as the area of a shape. The area of a triangle, area of a rectangle. So what would be A4? A4 is, oh, the media thing. I'm not sure. There's some people that had trouble with A4. A4, you could probably, even if you've already done it, you can try and do it again, simply because you just do a completely different thing. So A4 would be, that would be the media center, right? Depending on what you got hung up on, but you have to understand inheritance, polymorphism, and objects, though, and and information hiding. Those are sort of fundamental stuff. So you should be able to make an object or make a class, make a subclass of that, play around with it. So if you can do the lab, the one that I just posted way too late because I forgot to update it, the lab where you add another shape to this animation, this model view controller program, if you can do another shape there, that's fantastic practice. If you can do that, you're good, right? It requires you to understand how shapes are made, how to make a child class, how information hiding works, how polymorphism works, virtual functions, and requires you to look at inheritance. And that's, this is, it hurts. It's much like, how do I want to frame this? My kids are not in high school yet. I'm dreading the day when they have to go to junior high school and high school, because I know what it entails. You can talk about it all you want. You can say how high school and junior high school are going to be fine, but you know what you're getting into, and it's hard. It's the same thing with you guys. I know how hard it is to learn this stuff for the first time. So I can talk about theory all I want. I can tell you how to do things all I want. But the moment it actually involves coding it, that's where the real learning happens. It's scraping your knees and getting up again. And unfortunately, there's nothing I can do to help you avoid that particular issue. So it can be rough. That's why just more practice. And unfortunately, I wish I had a better answer than that. And it could just been a bad exam that day, or bad assignment, bad time, sometime. But that's why we have the labs. That's why we have the assignments. That's why we have all of this, because I know there's nothing I can do to teach beyond getting you to a point where you apply it and then it clicks in, like this virtual functions, right? If I didn't give anything on that, you stare at it for a while until you go, oh, that's what I did wrong. And then you fix it. Why do you have asserts? Why do you have to clear your memory? Everyone learns that the hard way. Why you have to call delete? Because you'll forget it. Or why you put things to null. You'll forget it. You'll get some weird bug. You'll spend hours searching for it. You'll curse and swear. You'll figure it out. And you go, oh, that's why everyone told me to set everything to null. Oh, sorry. Yes, I've been rambling on too long. Started the circle drawn. If we press shift and triangle, we press control. So they actually do different things, by the way, Fatima. Where is the code for that? Let's look at, so shape factory, and then I'll get to hopefully the virtual function. Sorry, I went off into, I dropped Elijah's question for a second. Here we go. Get type. I pass in a bunch of flags. Those are from Windows. In case you wondered why we did this in BIT2400, that's the reason. It's used everywhere. So if the shift key is down, this is given to you code, by the way. If the shift key is down, I'm making a circle. If the control key is down, I'm making a triangle. Otherwise, I make a rectangle. Oh, sorry. Okay. So if I wanted control and shift, I would have something like this. If, and I make the other one an else if flags and MK shift and flags and MK control. There it is. Right. If both are down, do this other thing. That's what you would expect. If I wanted a fourth option, control and shift are down, then I would get that. And I need to worry about the order of my logic. And that's essentially all I'm doing. And so when I get, where does this get called? It gets called right in here, make model, pass in the flags, tell me what kind of shape I'm dealing with. Is it a circle? Make a circle. If it's a triangle, make a triangle. Is it an animated rectangle? Make an animated rectangle. This is literally what I did for the labs. I had a control and shift down and I get an animated rectangle. Look at the shape. Here's make view. I get the type from the flags. Again, is it a triangle? Is it an animated rectangle? Is it a circle? Is it a rectangle? The controller. Well, actually, I'm only going to generate the same shape controllers each and every time. I didn't need something special. I didn't need a child class. They're all acting exactly the same, except animated rectangles from the lab, which I did for the lab, does have a different pattern. It handles this timer event that's going on. The other ones just ignore this timer event. They go in, they just ignore it. And this one says, hey, if the timer goes off, figure out how much I've animated from the last time, change the shapes of things. And so I get this weird animating thing that I've shown before. The animating rectangle. It's a slightly different version of the shape controller. It's a child class of the shape controller. And because it's special for animated rectangles, I figure out what type it is and make a special kind of special type of shape controller called an animated rectangle, animated rectangle controller. So it's still a shape controller. It's just a special kind. The other ones don't need to be special. So I just return a shape controller. Notice this is not an abstract class. To go back to Elijah's earlier thing, it's not an abstract class. I can make a shape controller. All of them have the same sort of thing. I don't need anything special for individual ones. Sure, let's be able to make an instance of a shape controller. Otherwise, I need to have a triangle controller, a rectangle controller, and they'd all look identical to one another. They'd just be an instant, they look exactly the same as the other as each other. Okay, the virtual. Let's think about what virtual actually means. So let's go to shape 2400. Let's go to, there we go. What's this virtual thing doing here then? That's for runtime polymorphism. Runtime polymorphism is I'm going to have a virtual table, a lookup table, so that when I say it's going to go, I'm going to call this function called getArea. It says, okay, where do I find it? I'm going to look in a table and look to figure out where the hell this is actually implemented. It might be in this particular class. It might be some child class. It might be wherever. So when I have a shape, let's say I have a triangle 2400, I call get, let's say I call intercept point. It's in a virtual method as well. Okay, so I have a triangle 2400. It has a function called intersect point. I go into the, so I call the function, it goes here, it says, oh, you want intersect point. Let me look it up in my big table for where the heck this thing is defined. Oh, it's your triangle 2400. Let me go, I'm going to go to where it's defined in triangle 2400. If you are just a shape, you go for the shape 2400's version. It gives you the right version of the function depending on what kind of object is calling you. At runtime, when I'm running my code, I figure out which function to call. Because if I don't have this, we've hit that before. If I don't have this virtual and I have, let's say, a triangle 2400, the pointer says, I have this array of pointers, right? Shaped pointers. If I say intersect point on one of those array of shape pointers, it thinks it's a shape. This is a shape 2400 pointer. It's a pointer to a shape 2400. So if I don't have this virtual, it'll say, okay, you want the intersect point method for a shape 2400. The pointer says you're a shape 2400. I'm going to use that one. And I get the wrong function call. The virtual table says, whoa, look it up. When you go to call this thing, look up which function to call based on the kind of object you actually are, not what kind of pointer you are. Like it says it's a shape 2400, but look it up. Oh, you're actually a triangle 2400. Go to the triangle 2400 class. Some of the shape, okay, decide which, when a pointer is appropriate parameter for functions to be passed in. Great question. So what happens? Yeah, that's me being a smartass again. Okay. If I pass in a shape 2400, whole hog, the whole thing, what gets passed? I make a complete copy of the object, all the data. I make a copy of everything and pass the data over. The original shape, the original object is still back there. I just made a duplicate. I made a photocopy of this thing and sent it over. So if I change anything in the photocopy, it doesn't affect the original. If I pass a pointer, it affects the original. I'm also only passing in a pointer, just one address where this thing is actually located. I don't pass the whole thing. I just pass where it's located. You can go and get it. That's why you'd sometimes pass in a pointer versus passing in the entire thing. So if I pass in a string, I'm making a duplicate of my original string, passing that data or the data from that original string. I'm passing the data into my function, making a new string that exactly matches the original, but it's a new string. The old string is not being affected at all. If I pass a pointer, it means I can change what the original looks like, or I'm actually accessing the original. In case you think that's really weird, it turns out Java does this to you whether you want to or not. If I pass in a object in Java to another function, it will pass in the pointer without telling you it's a pointer. It's a reference, actually. It's what they call it. And you'll get weird bugs and you go, what the hell's wrong with my code? Because they're hiding what's going on under the hood. C doesn't hide it. C says, if you pass me a pointer, you can change the original. And if you don't pass me a pointer, I will make an exact duplicate of the original and then get rid of it when I'm done. Some of the shape 2400 functions expect a parameter. For example, like this, or let's see here. Those are structs and structs. I know they're structs. You know why? Because they're all caps. Yeah, there's certain things for how you read, much like how you read a paragraph of, of text. You read it a particular way, or how you read it. You read tweets differently than I do. Everyone tells me that if you put punctuation at the end of a tweet or at the end of an instant, like a text message, that it means you're angry. And I'm like, what? Why don't you use proper punctuation? Do we have anything where we're actually passing in? Oh, there you go. This one. I'm not going to make a duplicate. I want the original. I want it to know where the original is so we can get the data from the original. I don't want to make duplications of it, because if I make a duplicate of it, and you change the, so let's say I don't do this. Maybe I just pass in shape 2400 without the star. Now PMOD changes. So the original model changes. Does the copy I have change? No. I need these to be in lockstep. I need you to pass in something so that I know where the data is and I can get it. But if I get a duplicate of it, I don't have the data. I have a duplicate. I have a copy of it. I want the original. I want to get the access for the original. I want one place where all that data is located. And that's the reason why we have a pointer there. I need the shape view needs to know about the model. It needs to be able to get data from the model. So I pass a pointer to that model so I know where to get my stuff. That makes sense?
Yes, so you're just referencing it directly, basically, rather than making a copy.
I don't want to make a copy in this case because the copy is going to get outdated, right? The model's going to change. My copy won't change.
Okay. So another question then about that would be, why do you use the asterisk rather than the ampersand?
What is the ampersand?
Reference.
Yeah, pass by reference. You could have used the ampersand, but then I need to keep a copy. So this thing actually keeps the pointer around and keeps it in my structure. If you pass the ampersand, then you need the pointer to that data structure again anyways.
Okay, so you need to dereference it.
You would need to dereference it anyways, because otherwise I need to be able to keep it around, and I can't keep a copy of it. I have to keep where it's located in space. That's the only real logical way of doing it. I'm also not a big fan of pass by reference for I'm hoping a fairly good reason. What ends up happening when you pass by reference is whoever's calling you does not realize that they're calling it pass by reference. If I'm asking if my thing says pass me a pointer, I'm figuring they're going to change my code. They're going to change my values. If something is called with a pass by reference, I don't know what they're going to do with my code or what that object. So let me see how I would want to refer to this. If you do pass by reference, so I pass shape 2400 without that star, or actually with an ampersand, I have direct access to this object and I can change this object. The person calling this thing, when you call this thing, you don't know that they're going to potentially change your data. Because there's no indication that you're doing anything about it. You're just passing in an object. and then somebody else can change it on you. That's where the real issue is. It's sort of this ninja edit to your code, right? Let's say I have a string. Let's see if I can do this one. Okay. S, and then I have and then edit to S. If I pass in a string there, I would expect when I pass in that string, it's going to make a copy of that string, and that ninja edit's not going to modify that string S. If I pass in a pointer to S, I'm pretty sure they're going to change my string S, right? It's sort of this indicator. Yeah, you pass in a pointer, they're going to mess around with your stuff, right? But if you pass in a reference, but if you just pass in S, you're expecting it's just you're using it, but you're getting a copy of it. Pass by reference doesn't tell you that it's getting the actual date, it's getting the actual string S and can modify it on you. And that's the issue. I think I need to double check, Stefan. I need to double check what the questions, like, just because I listed the questions and numbers and stuff like that, it shouldn't be listed 6 and 7 listed twice. I just need to double check. I added a little snippet of text and I could have made a mistake in there. So I want to double check on that. I wanted you guys to be able to see what kind of questions I'm going to be asking. 6 and 7, as far as I know, are actually highly related to one another. I also know I removed an exam question last Friday, so things might be out of date with some of the texts. I wanted to do at least one more pass on all the exams that I'm running this week. So that could be the reason for why you have 2 question 6 and 7s. Yeah, it could just be a little typo on my part. Why don't we UML at the start of the course? It seems like it would be helpful for planning our programs. Do you remember the beginning of the course? Sorry, the beginning of course, people, we are not getting into the kind of depth that really necessitates UML. UML is unified, universal markup language. Is essentially you draw pictures and diagrams to show how these things are connected to each other. So a linked list is, I have a linked list node, which then points to another, which has a linked list node, a pointer to a linked list node, which has a pointer to the linked list node, which has, like, all the way down. What you have with UML is, first of all, I don't know anyone outside of, like, software engineers do it, but I know very few people in my 20 years of programming. I know very few people that do formal UML, very much like I know nobody that does proper formal agile development. I know people that take what they want out of it but it's UML is a very, very formalized language. Just like pseudocode, when people talk about pseudocode and they say it has to look this way. No, pseudocode should help you understand your code. UML should help you understand how these things are connected together, or how your data works. It seemed like it was, I would argue that it seems like another language when people are already struggling with C++, and our code itself is not big and bold enough yet, at least, to warrant it. I think the moment you start doing data structures, yeah, UML, probably, sure. But it's yet another thing to learn, and it's not necessary. I don't necessarily, it might help some people, but I'm not sure if it's just going to muddy the waters for a lot of people, which waters are already pretty muddy. But it's a way of doing like a pseudocode for how you string together all your various objects and how they all communicate with each other. It's I've only had one course in it. It was in my second or third year at Queen's, so people can be very, very, firm about it. It's very useful, but yeah, it's really, seriously, it's being used right now, constantly. It's the second most, or if not the one, I think it's the second most now, most popular language on the planet. It's old, absolutely, it's still really in use. It's also uniquely, how do I want to say this? So it doesn't seem that useful for you guys, or especially for people that are doing a lot of front end GUI like stuff. But it is actually being used by almost every single game out there. Unreal, for example, does C++. But Windows 10 is based on C++ and it's continually updated. C++ 19 and 20 just came out. Yeah. Nice, Elijah. Thanks. It's in regular use. It's a damn hard language to learn with. I will say that. It is a compromise, unfortunately, however you want to look at it, for this degree program. Because if you're talking about people that are doing networking and people that are doing, media production and design, or NPD and IRM, or any of these other things, what do they have in common? The one language you could say all these people would probably need to learn it, maybe Python and C++. So they made the decision on C++ because it is sort of the grandfather language that all these other languages are based off of, and you really know your stuff when you're done with it. But it's one hell of a journey. There's a lot less intimidating languages out there, and I fully admit that because, yeah, it's an intimidating language. There's only I'm not making that choice myself. I get told to teach C++. It's what I know, but at the same time, you could make the argument for other languages, but it was well thought out. It's just hard for you guys. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible, but it ain't easy. I will fully admit that. Okay. Other questions. We didn't even get going on any of this stuff, but that's fine. I want to make sure that you guys are feeling a bit more comfortable with this. I have the solutions for what I think are the solutions for the sample exam, if you want to look at that as well. And you can always ask more questions. And we can go over, and I can even give you other examples if you want to do that. I just want to make sure the point of these synchronous lectures is for you guys. It's not for me, because I could save myself some time. I could be eating supper with my kids downstairs. It's meant for you guys to make sure that you feel adequately prepared, or to clarify things. If I do a video that I think is clear and it's crap, I need to know, and I need to help explain things to you guys, right? Or give you another exposure to something, or I'll let you ask questions about the exams, like what we're doing. So that's why we have these sorts of things. Even if we're not doing it right now, it's a remote class, and the only solution I have for how to help students through this is by letting them ask questions any time of day, anytime. So ask questions. I'm not trying to yell at you guys or anything like that, or scare you guys off, because I know it can be intimidating, but the only way to really learn this is by doing it, applying yourself, and should not be 4 to 6 unless you have an accommodation. So, and I think it's 4:05, but should double check on that one. It would be the time of class. It's designed to fit into the class time, which is an hour and a half. Well, it's actually more than an hour and a half. I gave you 90 minutes. And if you have PMC accommodations, you would get a bit more time. But it's the only thing that I can guarantee that people don't have something at the same time, because you're not supposed to have something at this time. Which is why we're also doing the synchronous classes right now. That answer your question, hopefully? No, long and the short of it, please ask questions. I know I'm going to start getting grumpy when when there's like 40 questions, but that's what we need to go through, because it's the only way to get you guys. That's why we have these labs, which I'm expecting people to do as well. Does anyone else see that? Do we start at 4 p.m. or that it says 4 to 6? Shouldn't say 4 to 6, but it's going to be based off of what you see on CU Learn, and CU Learn is going to have that information on it. I hope. Oh, that's when it closes officially. That's different than the time limit. I'm giving a little bit of buffer room in case somebody spends, is 10 minutes showing up, or there's something weird that happens, or whatever the case is. There's a bit of a wiggle room in the window for when it opens or when it closes. I'm not leaving it open until 8 o'clock, because what you would do the exam yourself, then go help your friend at 6 o'clock. The exam's designed to, to use up most of that time, but not every last minute of that time. And so technically you can start 4:30. I wouldn't suggest it, but you could technically start at 4:30. Yeah, exactly. It's based off of when you start the exam, not exactly at this particular time. No, you have 90 minutes. And then technically the exam will shut down hard at 6:05. I think that's what we ended up having last time around, because I thought it was when you could start the exam. I think it's when that closing period time happens, it slaps everyone in the face, which is, I think, what happened last time. It's very ambiguous online when I was looking into it more. Yeah, well, maybe not. Then I give more questions. I'll be like, I got 2 hours to give them questions, more questions, more. Right? It doesn't help anybody. Scope rules. Okay, an hour and a half. Let's not say 1:30, because I'm going to think the exam starts at 1:30 p.m. What do you mean by scope rules? You mean like this thing?
Yeah, so I guess it kind of also relates to virtual functions, but like, when do we look? I guess we first look inside of our local scope, and then if it's not there, we go to global. Is that how they operate?
Yeah. So it's normally it goes the most local scope on out. So if I have a for loop inside of this and I have a variable called G, then I will use that G in the for loop. Then I will go to this G. Then I will look in the global scope after that. So you don't want to get into those situations where you have this with this. Okay, the Moss report. You don't want to have one of these scopes where you have the same name for the variable 15 different times. You do get something weird though with this. Let's see if I have an example of it. One place where I can show you a really weird kind of scope. Okay, shape controller. Let's see if I use this somewhere. Okay. If I call this, instead of R1, if I called it, ret val, or if I called get bound, I have something called, let's see, do we have a set method? Setters are awesome for this. PTX, PTY. Okay, I was intentionally avoiding this issue. Let's say instead, no, that's still going to work. And focus is selected. I want to set, okay, focus on. What if my variable here was called focus on? This one right here. What would happen? I have a variable as my member function called focus on, and the parameter coming in is also called focus on. Which one do I get? I use the local variable first, then the member variable, and then the global variable beyond that. And so what you end up getting is this weird case of, I could have the name of my variable being focused on. So let's say I gotta erase this in a second. Focus on. Hopefully that might not work because the header file is not going to have it called focus on.
Would you use
But
this pointer?
What this will do is it will change the local parameter coming in from focus on to O itself. It will not touch the member variable whatsoever, because when you say focus on, the first instinct is to say the local variable. And if there's no local variable named that, then I look at the member variable. So in order to work around this problem, I would have to do this, and then the focus on. Now I'm saying this object's member variable named focus on, that's going to be set to the variable focus on. Some people swear by this approach. I'm not one way or the other on this. I knew it looked like witchcraft when I first saw it. Like, what's this? Right, because you have a variable, you're setting it to the member variable. How do you know which one? You have to use this pointer. The this pointer is for free. Every single object has it. It's pointing to itself. It's me, myself, and I. This guy. Who has two thumbs, and that joke that you see in How You Met Your Mother all the time. Right? Who has two thumbs and a gambling problem? This guy. Right? The this pointer just points to itself and says this guy's focus on variable is going to be equal to that. Does that answer your question, or is there something else about scope?
No, you've answered it. Thank you.
I can do one more though, which is if focus on bool focus on is equal to true. And then I could say focus on is equal to focus on. No problems. And it's stupid, but you can do it. Why? Because this focus on takes precedence, then it's this one, then it's the member variable, then it would be global variables. It just goes, it's the order in which it gets declared. All right, let's clean that up. Let's focus. Let's do this. Do I have enough undos? I think I have enough undos. Great. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll let you go for the night and just ask questions. Whatever's confusing you. The big thing, get some practice. Make sure that you can make an object and a child class. So the sample exam has an example of this using groceries and weighted groceries. You'll know how things work when it comes to that. Do you have virtual functions? Can I make something purely abstract? Is it just set it to equal 0? Coding some of it up is probably a really good thing, just to make sure it's not, you think you understand it, but you don't. But just a bunch of practice is what will really do the trick. So I made an arrow class. I made an animating rectangle class. I made a super shape class, which is a rectangle, a circle, and a triangle all grouped into one, just for different kinds of practice tasks, just to get you comfortable with this. Hopefully.
I was just curious, why did we wait so long for our midterm? Why is it so late into the semester?
So I don't know what your guys' thoughts on this was. I was trying to do something different. Every other term, the other past terms I taught here, because the course outline prevents me from moving around an exam, what ended up happening in the past was first term at Carleton, I put one midterm. And so people didn't know how they were doing. They got to the midterm when they had about 1,001 other exams at the exact same time. And it's a big crunch time and there's nothing you can do because you can't move the midterm. I then put in an exam early to let people go, hey, you're struggling with the course, to give people feedback early. But they still had a midterm smack down in the middle where all the other midterms are. We put it so late because I'm hoping to not collide with every other class and have your midterm all in 1 week where you can't study for any of them and you just are in a panic mess. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. So the final exam is going to be everything plus sorting?
It can include sorting. It includes standard template libraries, templates. It can include, pretty much everything. Yeah, everything.
So this one is just without sorting, everything but sorting and whatever.
It's not just sorting to standard template libraries, hash tables, that sort of thing. But yeah.
Okay, I just saw one topic on Sealer.
No, there's others in there.
All right. Does this exam cover hash table? No,
Nope.
It doesn't, right? Okay.
Just up to model view controllers. Are we good? Okay, I'm going to take by your silence, the deafening silence, that you guys are good, or at least for now, and probably scared. but ask questions as we go, as you go along while you're preparing for this thing. And the big thing is you don't just stare and memorize. You don't watch other people do it. You got to get your hands dirty. So, don't be too scared about the MVC yet. I mean, it's more recent questions. So, I'm trying not to really beat it to death, but
What's the majority of the stuff going to be on, like the focus area? Usually every test has like a focus area, like, oh, less of this, more of this, to kind of help you study, review.
object-oriented programming is going to be the big focus area, but that means there's knowing C syntax, but anyone, you can look up C syntax, but knowing inheritance, knowing polymorphism, knowing information hiding. So A4 is a very good, I know it was scary for a lot of people, but being able to make classes and child classes and sort of stringing them all together is really, it affects everything else, right? Mono-view controller stuff that we were doing is based on that as well.
Is there going to be a lot of tree node?
No, but it's possible to throw a tree node in there because you've seen it before.
Okay.
How can you hear me right now?
I can hear you.
Cool. How long should the sample exam take?
The sample exam I said it should take 80 minutes, but I made that in fall 2019, and so it might be longer than 20 minutes, longer than 80 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I may have been off on that one, but at least, you know, try and time yourself. And if you were 4 hours, oh yeah, if you're 90 minutes, fine.
Okay.
It's also part of it is to just make sure that you learn to cut your losses at certain times, right? If you're at 80 minutes on this exam and you've gotten question 1, then you need to know to just dabble in a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Other questions? All right. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate all the hard work, and I will hopefully talk to you soon. I'm going to say something on Piazza about this, but I'm going to probably leave open Discord and then just every once in a while just spit out you have 60 minutes left on the exam or something like that, just to help people keep track of time. All right. Talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.